Hi everybody, this is Moyna Bass Fishes. I am Jim Moyna, professional bass angler since 1995 and an angler since I was born. So in this video we are going to talk about forward sonar and some of the initial beginning steps to learning how to use it. A lot of these things I'm going to discuss will apply to any brand forward sonar. I use Lowrance, the Lowrance Active Target. That's what I use. So there may be a few things I say that will be specific to that, but in general, what I'm about to say will apply to any brand. All right, now, the reason why I'm doing this video is because, and this is particularly true with some of the older veteran anglers. And before we even get into that, okay, let me just say this is not a discussion on the ethics of it. Should it be allowed in tournaments? Should it not be allowed in tournaments? That's not what this is a discussion of. This is a educational video to help those beginners with this technology. Maybe give them some, be given some tips that will hopefully help you accelerate your learning of this technology. So, and the one thing that just bothers me, especially from the older anglers, I'm 59 years old, so I hear this from my age group, I hear this from older age groups, and the thing I always hear is, well, I didn't grow up with video games, so I'm not used to it. It's because these kids, this young group that's so good with it, well, they're only good with it because they've grown up with video games their whole life. Guys, that is nothing. That is so far from the truth. That is such a stupid thing to say in my mind. It comes from a lack of understanding what's going on. It drives me nuts when I hear that, and I hear it all the time. I'm 59, and it takes a lot of patience to learn how to start to use it and how to start catching fish with it. It takes time. It takes using it, familiarizing yourself with it. That's what it takes. It does not take having a whole youth spent playing Call of Duty and Halo and Minecraft and all those games. Those are the games my kids played growing up, and I played with them too a little bit. But anyways, and because I would play with my kids with video games, I totally understand how that is not the reason why these young kids are good with it. I think they're good with it because they maybe the younger generations are more quicker to embrace technology and accept it, and they're not so set in their ways. So maybe that's perhaps why they just jump right into it and take off with it. Whereas a lot of us older anglers are maybe more ingrained with how we've always done things, and we would prefer just to do it the way we've always done it rather than just jump into something that's new and expensive. That sucks. There is a financial cost to this technology. To get into it, you got to lay out some cash, and that sucks. And fishing was so much simpler when it was just a willow stick and a piece of twine and a hook. But that's not where we're at with fishing anymore. And again, I'm not going to get into the merits of the ethics of this. I have a lot of fun using this technology, but at the same time, I totally understand the arguments where perhaps it is infringing upon the concept of fair chase in hunting and fishing. But that's all I'm going to say about that. This is not the discussion. All right, so a lot of the frustrations with first-time users is actually trying to even see your bait. I remember when I first put this technology, my Lowrance Active Target, on my boat, took it out, and I would throw my bait out there, and I'd be like, what the heck? I can't see my bait. Where's my bait? I don't see it. Then I'd fan my trolling motor around. I'm like, I don't see nothing. And I'd throw it out there again, and it was really frustrating to see what was going on. Then finally I'd see, like, oh, there's a little, I'd see it for a second, and then I wouldn't, and it was, I'm like, how is this any, seriously, I'm thinking in my mind, how is this helping anybody catch a fish? I can't even see my bait. I don't know what's going on. What the heck, right? That was totally my experience. And that's an experience with everybody when they first get on it. It's like really frustrating trying to see your lure. It's frustrating to see what's going on. And if you just shut it off and never turn it on again, you're missing out, because there is a learning curve with this. There's levels to this game. There's levels to this technology of use and ability and skill. So let's get everybody off the ground level by using the tips in this video. All right. So I understand it's frustrating at first, because I was there. Colleagues of mine, friends I have, same thing. They frustrated with it at first. I got a friend that, I got friends that, guys older than me, and I'm proud of these guys for doing it. They're not accepting. They did not accept the fact that they're too old for this. They didn't accept that. They understand if they're going to compete in a tournament, this is something they got to have, and they push through the learning curve. And these are guys older than me. They are now catching fish off of their forward sonar because of the patience and just the stubbornness to push through the frustrations of what you experience when you first use this technology. Because you just don't turn on your forward sonar and fish are waving to you like, hey, here I am, just throw anything over here and I'll bite it. That's not how this works, okay? It's not how it works. So fight through that frustration. It's going to be frustrating. But here, now let's get into some tips. I got some stuff written down. All right, well, first of all, I guess the first thing we got to concern ourselves with is the settings that you put on your sonar. Now, like I said, I use the Lowrance Active Target. I usually put my forward range at 80 to 100. At 80, with finesse lightweight baits, I can't even cast 80 feet. With heavier baits, I can cast heavier bait. I can cast farther than 80 feet, and with even a fewer select group of baits, I can cast farther than 100. So like a heavy deep diving crankbait, I can cast farther than 100 feet, or a heavy football jig, or a heavy Texas rig. I can launch it out there, and 100 feet, it's hard to throw farther than 100 feet. It really is. Unless if you got a heavy compact lure that cuts wind, then those are the types of lures. But most of the time I'm on an 80-foot scale, okay? So that's where I put my setting. And then as far as depth, you want to see the bottom. So put a depth setting so that you do see the bottom there. And really, if you got a lake where you could get 20 feet, that would be good, or 15, that would be good. To me, that would be a good depth to be trying this at. And then with the Lowrance, we have something called a contrast setting. Now, with the other brands, I don't know what they call it. I don't know what they do with. I'm not familiar. But with the Lowrance, the contrast is basically how strong of a signal is this going to be. And with the higher you put the contrast, the brighter the things are going to be that are shown on the screen. So I suggest, and what I've discovered is most pros run at least 80. It goes on a percent basis, and I don't know percent of what. I don't know. Maybe just percent of maximum. 100% might be maximum contrast. 80% is 80% of maximum. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but Most pros, it's at least a minimum of 80. I'm usually around 84, 83, 85% most of the time. And that gives me a good clear picture of what's ahead of me. Um, Once you get in, if all you can, I know guys that run it on 100, and they do that when all they're concerned about is just seeing their lure. That's all they want to see is their lure, and of course the fish out there. But they're not so concerned with seeing details of the bottom quite as much, because at 100% you'll kind of wash out some of the bottom. But they want to see their lure at a distance, so they'll crank it all the way up to 100. So for a beginner, I would say, 85 to 90 is probably a great selection on the contrast. Okay, now another thing you need to understand is the actual physics, and you don't really have to understand. Okay, you don't have to understand the physics of it, but just understand what I'm about to tell you regarding the transducer and the beam that the transducer sends out into the water. It's not like, especially, okay, now the older fishermen out there, the forward-facing beam is not like what we used to think of when we were thinking of regular graphs or regular sonar readings that shoot straight down below the boat. Because remember, with those, we always called that the cone angle. That beam that our traditional sonars would send, we always pictured it as a cone, where at the top, right under the boat, the beam is narrow and then it widens out as it goes in depth, much like an orange traffic cone on the highway. It's just we'd always picture it like that. And there would be different, some cones would be like it's 15, some would be at like 23 or whatever. You could, depending on which transducer you put on there. But that's what we always thought of, is that narrow, then widening out. Okay, that is not how forward beams work on our forward sonar transducers. Picture it more like just a straight laser beam. One narrow beam going out ahead of the transducer. And what that does for you is, first of all, it makes it extremely hard to see. It makes it really hard to put that beam on your little 1/4 ounce jig or whatever you're throwing. Okay, it makes it difficult, but with time and patience and skill and learning your equipment and learning how to operate everything and being more finesseful with the foot pedal on your trolling motor, you start to develop a really good, skillful ability with putting that beam on your bait. And same with the fish. When that beam goes out, it's going to intercept the fish, and if you move that beam with your trolling motor just a little bit, that fish is going to go off screen. You won't see that fish anymore. It only takes a slight rotation to affect what your screen's putting out. So just keep that in mind. It's just it's a straight laser beam out there, and just a slight rotation of the trolling motor, because we put that transducer on the shaft of our trolling motor, and it rotates with the rotation of the trolling motor from the foot pedal of a trolling motor foot pedal. So just keep that in mind. And so to get good at forward sonar, initially, you have to become a master of finessing your foot pedal on your trolling motor. Okay, that mastery is really important. And with older anglers, your balance may not be as good as these guys that are 18, 19, 20 years old. Your balance isn't as good. So the finesse you have with your foot on that foot pedal is not going to be the same level as a 20-year-old, because their balance is much better. If you're 60 years old, I'm 59, you lose coordination, you lose balance as you get older, you lose muscle mass, just everything that helps you with balance, you lose that. So that's one reason why these younger kids can do it so much better, is because there's very finesseful. But here's what I suggest you do to improve your balance, and that's just put your butt seat. I see so many old guys fishing without a butt seat up there trying to operate their forward sonar, and especially in wind. Okay, especially in wind. Wind wreaks havoc on trying to operate your forward sonar efficiently, because your bow's bouncing around and the wind will blow the bow this way, that way, whatever, and you're trying to keep that laser beam on your lure out there, or a specific fish, and the wind's moving your bow around. You're having to make little adjustments, little rotational adjustments with the trolling motor constantly. And the butt seat is your friend to run forward sonar. I highly suggest anybody that's new to this, even if you're young, anybody that's brand new to this technology, brand new to forward sonar, use your butt seat. That'll stabilize your balance, and you'll be able to more finessefully rotate that trolling, because it only takes just a slight rotation to put that lure on screen and put that lure off screen. So that butt seat is critical for just holding your balance and being able and allowing you to operate that trolling motor with finesse and rotate it with finesse. In tournaments, if I see a windy day coming in a tournament, I for sure have my butt seat up front if I'm in a forward sonar kind of a fishing pattern, for sure. I mean, without a doubt, because with that wind, I mean, the wind is totally makes it hard. Really, I mean, that's like, that really escalates the difficulty in operating forward sonar, for sure. And in fact, the first time you use your technology, if there's wind blowing, find protected areas, find protected bays, coves, whatever, and that'll make it easier. And ideally, the first time you use your forward sonar, it'd be nice if it was a calm day. I mean, that would be really nice, and because then you could understand. I mean, I'm telling you, the wind is can turn forward sonar patterns into a nightmare. But the guys that are really good at it, well, they can fight through it, and they're so good at finessefully fishing. They're so good with their direction on their beams off their transducers, and adjusting that beam with bow movement and wind and waves, and it's a real art to it. It's a real skill. There's levels to it, for sure, without a doubt. All right, what else we got to say? We got more things here to say. Okay. Okay, we talked about the settings. We talked about putting in the butt seat, and let's see. Oh, here, this is a really good tip. Okay, lure. When you first start using your forward sonar, I highly suggest using a large profile fishing lure. And that's because it'll show up much better than a smaller profile. It seems to me the size of the bait is very important as to how well it shows up on your screen. So if you want to fish, and also use a lure where you just use a steady retrieve. Just because that's just when you're first learning it, that's just gonna, you're not gonna have to worry about having to throw a jerk bait or whatever. Just throw a bait that you can throw out there and just start steady crank it and watch it on your screen as you retrieve that lure closer and closer to the boat. And choose a bigger lure. Like, okay, a 3-inch swim bait with like a 1/4 ounce head is going to be a challenge for a beginner to see that on the screen. So if you can bump that 3-inch swim bait up to a 4 or 4.5-inch swim bait with a 1/2 or 3/4 ounce head, that's going to show up much better. You know what really shows up good is an umbrella rig, or the Alabama rig is another name for it. Those show up really good, really, really good on a forward sonar screen. So, and like a crappie jig, those are really tough to keep on the screen, really tough, because they're just so small, they just don't bounce back much of a signal. And it seems to me, it's not so much the material of the bait, it's just the size, it's just the profile of the bait that really determines the strength of the signal coming back. So start off, you know, if you're going to throw a swim bait, throw an Alabama rig, or if you want to just throw a one hook swim bait, you know, make sure it's like, you know, at least 3.5, 4 inches. I would say 4 inches, and a half ounce, 5/8, 3/4, something like that would be a great choice to start with. And it may be where, I mean, that might be the thing to use for whatever day you're out there. Who knows? But bigger lures, okay? Steady retrieves. You know, that's eventually, as you get better, you'll be able to throw your jerk baits out there and watch those come in. You know, any bait, crankbaits, jerk baits, spinner baits, chatterbaits, all that stuff will show up. Yeah, big chatterbaits show up pretty good too. So get like a half ounce chatterbait, put a nice chunky trailer on there, and those usually show up really well on your screen. So keep that in mind. Another thing is the accuracy of your casting ability is another thing that's really important. And it's really important. Okay. So if I have my forward range set at 80 on my active target, and I see a fish that is 55 feet away from the boat, and I need to be able to cast that. I like to cast my bait maybe 3 or 4 feet beyond it and let the bait sink close to its level and then retrieve it through the fish. So it's really important that you can throw, if I see fish out there, a lot of times what I do is I'll have the beam on the fish, I'll keep the beam on the fish, and then I make my cast, and I want my cast to line past the fish, but still in line with that beam. So I'll still have the fish on my screen, and then my bait will hit the surface, and a lot of times the surface splash as you get good with the unit, you'll see that surface splash of your bait, and then you'll see your bait start falling away from the surface, and that's the ideal situation. So that's the casting accuracy is really important. Now, here's a tip to help you with that casting accuracy, and that is when I first started learning, I would put my boat directly straight downwind of whatever the target was, whether it was a stump I saw on the screen or an actual fish I saw on the screen or a tall clump of weeds. I put my boat straight downwind, so I'm throwing straight off the bow in line. I don't think I've said this. The trolling motor that I use is the Minn Kota Ultrex, and the head of that thing actually rotates around and points in the direction of the motor that is below water in terms of propeller. So when you line up your transducer when you mount the transducer on the shaft of that, you line it up so that corresponds to the direction of the top head of that trolling motor. So you have that trolling motor is telling you which direction that laser beam is pointing at all times. And it's really handy with the Minn Kota. And let me just say I tried another angler's boat, and they had a Lowrance Active Target, and they had a different trolling motor, and it was really hard. I mean, this is how fine-tuned an angler gets with their equipment and with their forward sonar. I jumped into another angler's boat with the Lowrance, but it was a different trolling motor, and I had a heck of a time keeping the beam on the fish, casting my lure into the beam, and it was just a whole different. I was totally not in tune. That's how tuned in as a fisherman you become with your forward sonar equipment, which is the forward sonar itself and the trolling motor. The trolling motor is really important in forward sonar. And just you becoming like, it just has to become an extension of your foot and your leg, and it's something you don't even think about. It's really important because when I switched to another boat with a different trolling motor in a friend's boat, I was really frustrated because I couldn't, it just wasn't the same, and I couldn't lay the beam on the baits as good. I couldn't lay the beams on the fish and hold it there as good. And there was a little bit of wind that day, so it just made it tougher. So, anyways, I don't even know how I got to that. Oh, with the accurate casting. So, like I said, be straight downwind of your target, and that way when that Minn-Kota Ultrex is pointing straight off the bow, that's how I could make my best cast. I could hit that line, that beam, the easiest if that trolling motor head is pointing straight out from the tip of the boat, and I can lay that lure right on that beam most of the time when I'm set up like that. Now, let's compare that to, let's say I'm looking for a fish, I'm rotating the beam around with the shaft of the trolling motor, and all of a sudden I see a fish, but it's like at a 90-degree angle. Let's say it's 50 feet out this to the right at a 90-degree angle. I have had a real hard time laying my lure on that beam when it's at a 90-degree angle, or any angle. The sharper the angle that it becomes, the harder it is for me to hit that beam on a cast. I've gotten better with it, much better, and it's just another skill that improves the more you use the technology. At first, it's going to be really hard. I mean, it's a learning. There's a learning curve with this technology for sure. And trying to hit that beam when it's pointing at a 90-degree angle out to the right or to the left, it's not going to be as easy to do it as if you have that beam straight off the front. Okay, so keep that in mind. I suggest just try to get straight downwind of whatever target it is, and whether it's a brush pile, stump, or whatever, and just cast straight off the bow. So with that all said, that is just about everything here on my list. Yep, said that. We covered that. Yeah, all right. That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Just remember, it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of time, and I'm not even going to get into how to tell the difference between a 10-inch bass and a 20-inch bass. We're not talking about that in this video because that's next level stuff, man. That's stuff I'm still working on and trying to understand. And differences, trying to identify fish species on the screen. That's another level. That's higher level stuff. This video is just kind of the basics to start with, and some tips to help you guys maybe not get so frustrated, or tips to help you guys just, maybe learn a little faster than what I did. Because nobody told me this stuff. This is stuff that I just, I got it early on when this technology came out. There wasn't a lot of information out there on how to use this stuff when you first get it. So a lot of this was just self-taught. I self-taught myself the contrast, the range, how to line up my baits and hit the beam and all that. And I can tell, and I'll say this right now, because if you watch some of these live streams, where they actually hook the forward sonar up to the camera, I mean, I know my casting accuracy is very good, as good as a lot of these guys, because I see them miss the beam, I see them fall short, I see them, maybe they're intentionally casting it too, okay, if they're intentionally casting it past, way past the target, that's, maybe that's intended. But if they fall short of it, or miss the beam altogether, I mean, I know my skill level is right there with a lot of these guys as far as that, the mechanics and the casting accuracy and all that. So, anyways, if you got any questions, throw them in the comments. I will be reading. I haven't read the comments of the last few videos I've done for a while, But this is kind of a big topic, so I will get into these comments and answer questions. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope you have fun with the technology. Don't abuse it. In other words, don't take it out there and to catch every fish and cook every fish you can. That's a concern I have, and that's a whole nother topic. Like I said, I just try not to get into that with this video. This is just a tip video for beginners. Thanks for watching. Over.